Hello everybody, this is a late video this evening as the Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin did a Facebook Live announcement at 6 p.m. today about some new measures arising from the surge in COVID cases in Sabah and Kedah that are to be taken very soon. I'm doing this video to give you a quick rundown of what the measures are, as well as my remarks on the communication from Tan Sri Muhyiddin. So here we go. Let us get started immediately. Tan Sri Muhyiddin did the announcement from home as he's under quarantine. He began immediately by announcing that, or saying that illegal immigrants in Sabah brought new cases to the state. Despite that, the Sabah state elections had to be carried out according to the constitution, as that was required. It is required that elections be held within 60 days after the dissolution of the state assembly. I have to admit I was a little perplexed by the Prime Minister's admission that the surge in Sabah was caused in part by the illegal immigrants and also the state elections. Now, initially I thought, oh, well, why didn't you beef up the border security as well as, countermeasures or the SOP for the elections during the election period? On second thought, though, I don't think we should be too hard on the Prime Minister, as with a little Googling I found out that Sabah has over 300 kilometers of rainforest on the border with Indonesia to guard. And so that's a lot of ground to cover in the best of times. Also, the Elections Commission is the body responsible for holding the elections. And now I feel confident to say that if the Elections Commission went ahead with a plan to carry out the elections, I'm quite certain that whatever plan they had was approved, vetted by the Ministry of Health. Now let me tell you why I believe that. Because if the plan was not vetted and it was truly dangerous, the Prime Minister would not have gone to Sabah. He just wouldn't have to. He's 73 years old, and I just found out that he has had pancreatic cancer, for which he received treatment in 2018, as well as chemotherapy treatments, which we all know are really hard on the body. So I'm confident to say that at the time, it was believed that it will be sufficient and safe. Yes. Third thing, now the Prime Minister has announced that there will be no nationwide movement control order as before. Instead, there will be these TEMCO orders, which are these targeted MCO orders. And I think that's a really good idea. Also, I think it's worth pointing out that Malaysia has been really fortunate because the fatality rate of the Malaysian victims of COVID-19 have been really low. Now, have a look at this chart. The case fatality rate of COVID-19 from Malaysia has always been quite low. Now, let me give you a couple of other countries for comparison. Let's start with the United States. Now, if you think, oh no, the United States is a joke, it's so bad there, we can't possibly trust it, alright, let's look at the United Kingdom. Even worse. Or we could look at France. Even worse. We could look at Sweden, which we all know did not actually do any kind of lockdown whatsoever. Terrible. And even if you look at what's been an exemplary, I think, like a model country, New Zealand, it's pretty much the same as Malaysia. In fact, maybe slightly worse. So actually, Malaysia has done extremely well handling the pandemic. So I think it's entirely justified to say we're not going to impose a nationwide MCO as before. Number 4, Prime Minister explains that he saw SOP violations in Sabah and he took actions to protect himself, such as giving orders to his team, his handlers, to avoid organizing events, campaigning, rallies in red zones, and keeping in-person contacts to a minimum, so he didn't go around shaking hands and talking to people face to face. I did wonder why he would mention that, because it seemed like a little bit of an odd thing, as though you're trying to say that I did such a good job. So I really have my, have been very good with taking care of the situation. And on second thought, I realized that, okay, no, I think it's a useful lesson, because this is something that can't be said enough for each of us as individuals. That is, we really, despite having the Ministry of Health approve a plan, the Elections Commission doing their best to carry out a plan, the Prime Minister still had enough awareness to take note of the situation on the ground and to instruct his team to avoid the red zones, to take extra precautions to keep people distance and not to expose him, or for him to expose other people to his team. So I think really this is a very nice indirect way to say we need to take control, more ownership of our own situation. And that's what I take away from it. Number 5, the Prime Minister mentioned that there are 17 million people in Malaysia using the MySejahtera app. That's amazing. That's over 60% of the country. Also mentions that Dr. Noor Hisham, everybody's favorite health official, has assured him that we have enough ventilators, PPE, and medicine, and that utilization rate for these resources is at about 29%, which is very reassuring that resources are sufficient and we're not having any kind of resource crunch. In fact, since the Prime Minister mentioned PPE, I just want to show everybody that we may not even need that many PPE. Turns out that one of the things the virus does is to impair the body's ability to breathe on its own. And using ventilator, which is an artificial breathing device, right? It helps your body breathe, and so your lungs don't have to do the work. It actually makes things worse for some patients because their body then stops working to breathe. So we may not even need all the ventilators that we have. But that's just a digression. Number 6, the Prime Minister spent a fair amount of time addressing the perception of double standards in enforcement of the quarantine policy. There has been reports in the past few weeks about so and so ministers going to Sabah, coming back, not undergoing quarantine. And I think months ago there was a minister who went to Turkey, came back, and apparently did not undergo quarantine. And the Prime Minister, I think rightly, as a communication tactic, emphasized this, saying that no, we will not have double standards. It's really important, and that he is also under quarantine for the second time. And I felt that this was really important because we Malaysians are a very cynical people, and having seen that some people were not punished the way we wanted for breaking quarantine, I think that really it puts at risk everybody, because more people would break quarantine than usual. Yeah. Number 7, the Prime Minister said a few other things that I really like. He said that he values feedback, invited feedback. He said we should not point fingers at this time, which I agree with. And he also said that we're not thinking about total lockdown. Also totally agree, because we all know that we've been through our version of a lockdown, and it worked. In fact, it may have worked too well. It may have been a little bit too much. So this scaled back version that we call TEMCO might actually be much better for us. He goes on to say that, yeah, the full lockdown would just ruin our social system and our economy. And I totally agree with that. I think it's the same everywhere. So for that, to prove that, I prepared a couple of things. In the United States, people are talking about the GDP sinking at an annualized rate of 40% in the current quarter. That is quarter number 2 right now. That's tremendous. That's unbelievable. And our own Department of Statistics in Malaysia reports that in the first quarter of 2020, the economy grew marginally at 0.7%. And that is a huge drop. You can see the trend line that prior to that, we were having close to 5% economic growth, quarter on quarter. So this is a huge blow. And I agree that no, we totally can't take more lockdown. And it doesn't just apply to Malaysia. I think it applies to Singapore. I think it applies to every country in the world. And yeah, I would just like to say a little more on that. That is, there is why the people don't want to go into total lockdown is because it just affects your livelihood. You can't make money. Nobody else can make money. Everybody just has to live on their savings, and not everybody has that savings. It leads to problems like depression. It leads to potentially suicides, problems with alcoholism, domestic violence. All of these are things that arise from the situation that a person finds himself in. You can't go out. You have no money. And all you have is your misery, and you cannot, you just take it out on whoever is closest to you. And if there's no one close to you, you may take it out on yourself. So it's absolutely super destructive. And you can't have total lockdown just so that you can stop the virus. It's just, the trade-off is terrible. Yeah. The Prime Minister then goes on, okay, so he concludes after this saying that there will be a suspension of travel from Sabah to the peninsula from the 12th October until 25th of October. And that large-scale gatherings such as marriages and conferences could be limited. But the Ministry of Health will advise the Prime Minister before any action is taken. And that's all that the statement was about. One last bonus remark for everybody who enjoys, the little bit of, communication analysis that I put into my videos is that, look at that. That's a terrible backdrop for the Prime Minister to use. I mean, obviously he has really nice art in his home, but that art is, wavy and uncertain, it doesn't give a sense of solidity and stability, which as the Prime Minister perhaps you want to communicate to the public. So I don't agree with Tan Sri Muhyiddin's choice of background, but otherwise I agree with the contents of his statement, and I feel that it was a really well done one. So I hope that everybody who's watching and listening, please take care. Do your best to protect yourself and your loved ones. I'll talk to you again soon. And it's really late for me here, and I'm going to head off. Take care. Bye-bye.